So hello everybody, my name is board member of Dynamo Northeast and I lead on Cyber North, Dynamo's cybersecurity cluster, which is supported by Accenture. We have an active and growing cybersecurity sector in the region with over 70 companies supplying services, the learning sector, professional services, and organizations that have cybersecurity teams to underpin their business operations. Cybersecurity is a significant part of the region's capability. So welcome to the second cybersecurity session of the conference with the title Cybersecurity in the Time of COVID-19. These are very strange times. And there's so much in the news these days about online threats, and I want to focus on this session on myth versus reality, what people are really finding rather than what they're hearing. So we're going to hear from the four speakers, Annabel Berry from Sapphire, Nicola, Japp from Accenture, Philip Anderson from Northumbria University, and Martin Wilson from the NEBRC. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then Martin has some slideshows, which will get the conversation going. So Annabel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Phil, yeah, my name's Annabel Berry. I'm the chief exec of an organisation called Sapphire. Sapphire are a company who specialise in cybersecurity solutions and services, and we've been around for around 24 years now, helping organisations address current and emerging threats in these areas. And thanks very much for having me on the panel.
I think Phil might be stuck on mute.
Yeah, it's which.
Should I just continue?
I can't. Yeah, could you speak? Yeah, please.
Yeah. So hi, for everybody on the call, I'm Nicola Japp, and I'm currently a security specialist working at Accenture. I'm part of the security team that are in Newcastle at the minute and currently looking to grow in the Northeast.
I'll jump in next.
Thank you.
My name's Philip Anderson.
I'll come back to you, Martin. Philip.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know what's going on. It's good. It's got a lot of technology.
I thought I put you all on mute.
Yeah, try to tell me something. So my name is Philip Anderson. I'm a senior lecturer at Northumbria University.
If you could take yourself off, please.
I'm off mute. Can everybody hear me?
I can.
No, you're still on mute.
We can.
No. Okay, I'll continue. Phil Jackman can just ignore me. So I'm a senior lecturer at Northumbria University.
Right.
I've been teaching digital forensics for since 2006, 2007. I help support the students in our cyber centre, which works very closely with Martin. I've known Martin Wilson for NEBRC for quite a while now. I also teach the digital policing on the police constable degree apprenticeship. I've just started a PhD, and in my spare time, I'm helping write a few European reports on collaboration between law enforcement, CSIRTs, and the judiciary on cybercrime. That's me, done.
Excellent.
Me next.
Thank you, Philip. No wonder I can never get you on the telephone if you're that busy, but there you go. And Martin, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, afternoon, everybody. My name's Martin Wilson. I'm a police officer seconded into the Northeast Business Resilience Centre. Prior to that, I spent the last 4 or 5 years setting up the Cyber Protect network in the Northeast. And now I'm working on this exciting project which covers the Northeast and Yorkshire, working with Phil and some of his talented students, and Sheffield Hallam and some of their talented students as well.
Excellent. So I think you've got a presentation for us, Martin, to get the conversation underway, if you'd like to get that up. And if anybody has any questions, please put them in through the chat during the session. And once Martin's finished, we'll have a general discussion about what he's telling us or not.
Right. Well, hopefully you can all see my screen. Is that okay?
Not quite up yet. But yes, great.
Great. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you a bit about what it is that we're seeing in regards to the kinds of online crime types, both from the individual's point of view and a business point of view. So what reporting have we seen? Obviously, I can't go into details, specifics, but I can give you general themes and a bit of an overview, and hopefully that'll form part of a bit of a discussion. So what we're going to start off with then is the cybersecurity breaches survey, and I've deliberately started off with this because for a plethora of different reasons, cybercrime or online crime is hugely underreported to policing, and it's reported typically through action fraud, and we'll have a look at some of that data shortly. The Cybersecurity Breaches Survey is an annual survey conducted by the government targeted at businesses and charities to understand, outside of that specific reporting through action fraud, what's actually going on. And the 2021 was released in the last month or so. And basically the headline sort of figure is that 46% of businesses are identifying at least one incident within the last 12 months. And the chart shows really the frequency of that. So, you know, some businesses are being attacked several times a day. What are those attacks then? Well, what businesses are telling the survey people is that the number one attack is phishing emails, which I have to say my experience in this field doesn't surprise me. 86% of 86% of attacks upon a business are going to involve phishing emails. And what's interesting is the last top 3 or 4 of these attacks hasn't changed since 2017. So it's the continual themes haven't changed that much. This slide shows that within organisations of a certain size, are some being attacked more than others? The answer is yes. Larger organisations tend to be attacked more frequently than, say, a micro organisation. But what I would say about that is what concerns me with micro is their ability to bounce back, protect themselves, and have that resilience to recover from a successful attack. So when we start talking about action fraud figures then, what I will say is that action fraud sometimes gets a bit of a bad press, a bit of a beating. And yeah, okay, things are not great, but I have to lend them some support to say the scale of this is that they're receiving reports. I think it's roughly 3 crimes a minute to deal with and to look at and to disseminate. Hopefully we've done and will continue to do a lot of work within the North East to try and ensure that everybody or business that reports cybercrime gets a level of service, which wasn't always true in the past. It's unfortunate to say. So really, we've seen a small reduction in the number of crimes that have been reported. And the third bullet point there is an interesting one, to say that there's been a 20% reduction in computer virus incidents. Is it the case that we're seeing more of a pivot to phishing per se, where it's the mandate stuff rather than phishing that's delivering the malware that's attached to the email? Point for discussion. The last bullet point's interesting because this is talking about the everyday citizen. They're saying that it's roughly 12% of computer virus incidents are actually ransomware attacks. This is an interesting slide because this is what we've seen April, June across several police forces across the North East and Yorkshire. And it talks about the different kinds of attacks that are hitting businesses in our areas. Now, what I have to say is, again, this is useful, but it's not definitive. It's beholden on when a person reports a crime to action fraud, they've got to classify it. So what you and I might class as hacking social media might not actually be what the crime rule, the crime counting rules say. So there's always a bit of discrepancy. And if we've got time, I'm happy to go to, whilst I can go into real detail, but I am happy to talk about what it is that we're seeing on this slide. But what I will say is that from my point of view, the hacking of social media and email, I've had a look at those, and those could have been avoided by simply implementing 2-factor authentication. That's I think it's a social media and Instagram hack of those. And again, it's where the password's been compromised somehow. From on this slide, I've gone into the detail. There are actually 5 reports of business ransomware. And again, having a look at those, it's difficult to say how predominantly that ransomware is being delivered, but on one, it's quite clear that the remote desktop's been attacked and the ransomware is being delivered in that way. This sort of second to last slide's interesting. It shows you specifically what kind of COVID crime reports that we're getting. This is a national picture. So what Action Fraud do is they will look for the keywords COVID involved in the reporting that crime, and it maps to this. And I guess the overall picture that I give to you is that a lot of it's phishing email scams, and a lot of the phishing scams are now being adapted to include COVID themes such as World Health Organization, NHS, trying to take advantage of the new business grants that have come out from government. And recently, whatever will happen with track and trace, how we're going to do it, you can guarantee that the bad guys will try and manipulate that somehow. Online shopping has gone up by 57%. This is obviously pre-COVID and post-COVID. We're not post-COVID yet, where we are now, but these are, trying to give you a bit of a steer, and that's all around selling the testing kits and sanitizer and pulse oximeters and face masks and stuff like that. And I think the face mask one will go up, because if it's going to be mandatory that we have to wear face masks on trains and stuff like that, you can guarantee the bad guys will start to try and leverage that more and more. Investment fraud's gone up. So you're looking at there where purported opportunities to take advantage of a downturn. The bad guys are trying to leverage that. And the last one, anecdotally, is password reuse. Again, just from open source reporting and Zoom bombings and things like that. I think that what's happening is whatever passwords stolen credentials have appeared online on the dark web, the bad guys are now turning those to be able to use them to try and log into our video conferencing, or try and use them to exploit our remote working. That's it from me. Phil, this is more of a one for you, but if we've got time to discuss it, really when you start considering the context of what I've talked about, cybersecurity is three things: it's technology, processes, and people. And there's a bit of a discussion around what do we think the bad guys are potentially trying to exploit with COVID? Which one of those processes are they trying to exploit? And has that actually changed at all? Over to you. I'll try and stop sharing my screen now.
That's great. That's great, Martin. Thank you very much. And so I'm going to start with a question for Annabel, please. Does Martin's presentation reflect what you're seeing in your day-to-day engagement with customers? Annabel, are you there? Nicola there instead. Nicola, is this what you're seeing on the ground in
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
customers?
So I don't think it was any surprise that, the types of phishing emails that are coming out related to all this is going up. Like, it's absolutely no surprise. And what was actually quite interesting though as well was around the virus thing as well. There's less viruses. And I think that that's a reflection on the fact that with everything that's going on, all of these companies that are trying to communicate things, so in terms of taxes and banking and things like that, they don't need to rely on sophisticated viruses to infect people. They can just send out those mass phishing emails and rely on the people to fall for it. And I think the question on sort of what this affects, it's definitely sort of the people. And I think that that's a common theme throughout security, that people are sort of, the weakest point within security. And I think that it's absolutely no surprise that the phishing emails are coming out, and sort of the different websites that can exploit people's information and get that data. I think another common theme that I thought was funny is around, even though there's less viruses, there's more ransomware. I feel like there's a common theme of money and data, getting hold of people's data, whether that's to sell sort of on the dark web, but it also all sort of ties down to that money factor, which as well is quite surprising as well, that they're attacking a lot of those bigger companies. Is it because they have access to more information, have bigger clients and more data that they can steal as well?
So it's clear that cybersecurity criminals like wolves, and they try to pick up the easiest prey, as it were. So, Nicola, are they just being lazy and just picking? Is there no real need to be innovative anymore because there's just too much?
I think so. And to be honest, I think from his question on whether that's changed since COVID has happened. It probably hasn't. I think that a lot of cyber criminals always try to take the easy route, and the easiest route is relying on people, you know, sending out those phishing emails and hoping that people can click on them and things. I don't think that people need to be sophisticated. And then as well, on Martin's point around sort of the remote access, you know, more and more people are now forced to be online to work. More and more people are forced to tap into these remote access tools, and most people know sort of the most common tools that are out there now that people are using. It's probably not very difficult to go out and find those vulnerabilities within those tools as well. So I don't think anything's changed since COVID-19. I think that most cyber criminals always take the easy option.
That's really interesting, because I've got, I think, 10 of these sharing tools on my phone now. Every day there seems to be a new one, so there must be always different vulnerabilities coming up. So I ask a question of you, Philip, then, because it's such a changing market. How do you, as an educator, of some of these things?
It's a very interesting and challenge. I mean, the whole domain is always shifting at a rapid pace, and I mean, you're along for the ride, so to speak. Technology changes. You know, if we go back 6 months, how many people had been using Microsoft Teams? How many people have been using Zoom and emails in a significant way to communicate with people? I mean, pre-COVID, I mean, right at the beginning, organizations were in buildings, I mean, in a secure infrastructure. Then all of a sudden, we've had to scatter the staff out of the four winds, and everybody's had to chase the tails. I mean, you've got the likes of Microsoft, Apple, Samsung, and the big companies out there who are always developing new technology. It's released out into the wild, and I mean, there are people out there who are looking for the latest vulnerabilities. I mean, Zoom, within weeks of everybody working from home and the schools closed, I mean, Zoom had huge issues, and they had to try and plug those holes quite quickly. From a student's perspective, it's, you know, you can't, our undergraduate degrees, it's a 3-year taught or a 4-year if you go on placement. I mean, even in that time scale, things have significantly shifted on. So there's a thing that we try and get across. Yes, we teach in the latest tools. We try and look at the latest examples, the latest case studies. I mean, Martin's examples, I mean, we've just developed a new module in one of our undergraduate degrees called Hacking the Human. I mean, because Martin's statistics and the way we look at cybersecurity, the human is a vulnerability now. Yes, we can secure infrastructure, we can secure hardware. I mean, you've got multi-million, multi-billion-pound industries behind supporting the technology to fix as many issues as they can, and then how much billions are behind the individuals. I mean, just to reiterate what Nicola said and what the statistics that Martin suggests is, I mean, the human being is always going to be the softest target. I mean, you've got different demographics around the world, really. Some are computer literate, some are completely computer illiterate, and all of a sudden they've been having to communicate with family online, they've been having to bank online, people getting smishing texts saying this is from the government, you need to pay for your COVID test. I mean, criminals aren't daft. This is a terrible way to describe it, but it's almost a gift to them. There's another opportunity for them to try and exploit it and make money from it. I mean, it's the usual stuff, the seasonal emails from HMRC saying you're due for a tax refund. So you teach the students it's a lifelong learning thing. You teach the students to test and look at how things are solving rather than specific cases, because things move on and technology moves on.
As if you ever get a tax rebate.
I've had several recently, but none have been forthwith.
You're absolutely right. So a few months ago, I'd never heard of Zoom, but now I wish I'd never heard of it. But there you go. Annabel, lovely to see you back anyway, so I don't know what quite happened there. Can I ask, technology, is what Martin was describing, is that what you're seeing on the ground?
Yeah, so apologies, I missed some of Martin's presentation because I was kicked out of the session, unfortunately. But picking up on what's been discussed, you know, just as I've logged back in, I think absolutely. I mean, we're seeing, I think, if that's what everyone else is saying, then certainly I would agree in terms of the fact that we're seeing known threats. You know, we're seeing known malware strings people are going after. or they're using known methods, exploiting known vulnerabilities, using known malware, and just changing the name of it. That's kind of what we're seeing in the most part. And of course, why would you? I mean, at the end of the day, these people are running businesses themselves, they're making money. You know, you're going to go to the quickest route. Why would you take the time to go and invent something new when actually, you know, the landscape in terms of numbers of users that are out there who are no longer behind protected perimeters, which is really effectively what we've all been building up over this, for most part of the last 25 years. You know, we've been focusing very much on the perimeter. So, so the number of people that are out there that they could potentially, try their luck with is increased. And, I think it's very much a revenue driven business at the end of the day. As soon as that gets a little bit more challenging, they'll move on to something else. And so, so I think we're not seeing anything from the intelligence that we've seen and what we've been sharing with our clients. We're not seeing anything particularly new. We're seeing most of what we're seeing is no methods. It's just the volume of it, really. And absolutely going on what Philip was just saying is, we're at a time of heightened emotion at the moment across the board for lots of different reasons, and preying on that is an absolute gift from a financial perspective, a health perspective. There are lots of people out there who are very concerned, and understandably, about the situation, and who may fall victim to an attack where perhaps a couple of months ago they wouldn't have. So yeah, so it's lucrative times, I think, for the criminals right now.
No, I think you're absolutely right. This is a business for them. That some of them have trust scores, trust their pilot scores, etc. And are you seeing any difference though between your larger clients?
No, I think we're, the feedback that we're getting, I think everyone was in lots of ways. I think it's not to do with company size. It's to do with how geared up they were to work in the way that we're now working before all this happened. And some very large companies weren't, and some very small companies, were absolutely more geared up to going. I know lots of organizations within a couple of days had their whole workforce working from home. So I think it's not to do with company size. I think it's to do with company culture and whether or not, how much you had to rush through in a quick amount of time, and how used to working very quickly or pushing through agile change within your organization. If you're used to doing that as a company, then actually, the last couple of months has probably just been sort of more of the same, but at an enhanced pace. If you haven't been used to doing that, then that's where real challenges are going to open up. And I think that's where, personally, I think looking at what changes have been made and very quickly, and what's been made temporarily and what needs to be wound back potentially, that's kind of the next conversations that we're having with organizations now. Is that so? I don't think it's really to do with company size. I think it's to do with company culture and how adept they were to working remotely before, to be honest.
So it's not the size of the dog in the fight, as they say. Okay, Martin, can I come back to you and the same question I was asking of Phil? How does the police keep on top of their rapidly changing cybersecurity landscape?
It's a real challenge, and we sometimes fairly, sometimes unfairly come in for some real criticism. And don't get me wrong, if your business has been attacked, you're going to have some pretty strong views about what should happen and what the remedy should be. The scale of this is massive. But make no bones about it that, I said at the beginning of the slides, I think action fraud gets 3 crimes a minute reported to it. And as I've said, it's hugely underreported. So the scale of it's huge. The international challenge of it is huge. But that said, when I wind back the clock 4 or 5 years ago, when it was me in the Northeast sort of flying the crime prevention message from a policing point of view, that is no longer the case. What is now the case is each police force has its own dedicated cyber teams that have an investigative arm and also have a crime prevention arm. You've got the Northeast Serious and Organised Crime Unit, where I used to work, that has an investigative arm and a crime prevention arm. And then you've also got the National Crime Agency that has from a national point of view, goes after the bad guys from an investigation point of view. Now, with the exception from the NCA, the majority of that wasn't there 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm not going to be disingenuous and say there isn't more work to do and can be done, but we have tried to up our game. And I think what's really important is no matter what the crime type is, whether it's burglary, shoplifting or cybercrime, you need that partnership approach. So it's working with Dynamo, it's working with Accenture, Sapphire, Northumbria University, it's creating the Northeast Business Resilience Centre to try and get everybody to come together to try and avoid, which are frankly, as you've been talking, I've been multitasking and reading some of these crimes that have come through on that second to last spreadsheet. The vast majority of these could have been avoided. And, you know, that's not victim blaming. But the harsh reality of it is that a lot of this could have been avoided with some very low level interventions, such as two-factor authentication. So we really need, as a community, I feel, to get that message out there and have behaviour change. Okay. So instead of having the same conversation in the 5 years' time about two-factor authentication, how do we try and get that message out there, which enables that behaviour change is the point that I would make.
Well, that leads me very nicely on to a couple of questions that have come from the audience. So the first one is in terms of the threat intelligence and sharing stuff through intelligence platforms. How relevant do you think that is to quelling the sort of majority of cyber attacks during the COVID-19 pandemic? I'll come to you, Annabel, if you don't mind on this, because this should be right.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think obviously as a community, I think we're getting a lot better at sharing intelligence than we were probably 10 years ago, but we're still way away from where we need to be. And I think, you know, obviously the sharing initiatives that NCSE came out with and things like that, you know, I know that there's been a reasonably good uptake on those, and lots of people are members of that. And I think that there's more that can be done, I think, within pockets of sectors. For example, I think, you know, just sharing, I know this is something, for example, the banks do very well already. You know, they have a regular call where they all sort of, you know, share within a very trusted community about, you know, the things that they're seeing. And I know that they find that incredibly useful. And I think that's something that we need to probably expand out, maybe into other sectors, specific sectors, or maybe into, you know, wider communities. So I think it's something that's work in progress. I don't think we're there yet. I mean, at the end of the day, the criminals are far better networked and they share intelligence far better than we do. There's still a bit of you know, a feeling that people don't want to talk about the fact that they've experienced something or something's happened within their business, you know, perhaps from a competitive edge or something like that, or just actually they just don't want to, you know, own up to the fact that, you know, or share that. And I think we've got to get past that, because I think the more that we help one another, ultimately, the better it is for everybody. So I think, so I don't know how we break those barriers down a little bit more from where they are at the moment, but I think we're certainly heading in the right direction. And I think, you know, I think it depends in terms of the threat intelligence information coming towards you. It depends on how mature you are as an organization. I think with regards to your security standpoint, you know, today, you know, it's not very interesting and exciting, but, you know, some of the things like, you know, for example, Marta was just talking about two-factor authentication. We talk a lot about the basics, and that's been the thing that we've been talking about, you know, with a lot of our customers and organizations, and saying, you know, get the basics right. But the reality is the basics are really hard to do and they cost a lot of money, and that's why we don't have it right so far. So I think rather than, you know, if it's a choice for me between paying for really, you know, expensive threat intelligence fees and getting that type of information, and yet you don't have your basics as good as they could be, then focus on that first. You know, get that right. It isn't, like I said, it's not exciting. It's you know, we've been talking about this for a really, really, really long time. But ultimately, that's the thing that's probably going to give you the best protection at the moment, while we're really facing stuff that we know about and actually could be prevented and could be protected, like Martin was just saying. So I think it definitely has its place in organizations that are just much more mature and have the capacity to be able to consume and look at those intelligence feeds a bit more. But if you're not quite there yet and you're looking where to spend your money, which will be obviously under high scrutiny for businesses at the moment, then I would say probably, you know, by all means join community, share information, but perhaps, you know, there are other things that you need to be prioritizing at the moment.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Annabel. I'll come on to you, Nicola, now, because another question: do you have any tips of people stop falling for phishing attacks? Is there anything that we can falling into those common traps today?
And I guess it all comes down to the basics that Annabel has been mentioning. It's a lot of awareness, it's a lot of education, and I think with some of those sort of threat intelligence tools that are out there, they are great, and it's great to share things between companies and in communities as well. But it still comes down to the fact that, you know, somebody will click on a phishing email somewhere, and I think like you can put all of the technical controls in place, but if somebody's going to click that email, they're going to click that email. I think one of the things that we do is try to educate and try to, you know, send out those fake phishing emails and stuff to make people click on them and sort of hang their head in shame a little bit when it pops up to say you've been phished and things like that. That's all really important, and education is a massive piece, but I don't think that we will ever get it right, and there will always be somebody that might fall for it. And especially thinking sort of times like this within COVID-19, security isn't people's priorities. Everybody's mindset's changed. People are working from home where these phishing emails are going to come in and they're trying to look after children or have got caring responsibilities and things like that. And just security isn't the number one mindset at the minute. I think from a technical perspective, in terms of mindset and sort of threat intelligence and things like that as well, we should always keep up with sort of the latest trends and things like that, but we're never going to. The criminals are always going to be one step ahead of us. So the mindset that I always try to teach people is assume that you're going to be breached, assume that somebody's going to click on that email or somebody's going to get into your network, and then work backwards. So what the steps that you can do to prevent that sort of stuff. So once they're in, can you prevent lateral movement? Can you stop people ingress and egress points so that people can't extract the data that they're actually after? And it's always assume that you are going to be breached and deal with it once you are, rather than trying to prevent it, because I think that's probably impossible.
Okay, well, that's fascinating. That actually leads me on to my next question, which I'm going to ask for Philip. So you spend all your time teaching students on how to protect organizations. Are you not teaching them how to create the new threats in the future?
Not necessarily, but test the latest technology to determine where threats could possibly come from. We're not asking the students to invent new threats and then let them out in the wild. No, by all means. I mean, it's all part of the education process, isn't it? And our students, when they graduate, will feed into businesses and organisations and hopefully bring in all these new ideas and all this learned theory that we've been giving them. And again, this links back to why we've developed the Cyber Clinic and why we're linking with Martin as well. We've got to keep our students current. So by linking the Cyber Clinic in with Martin and working alongside all the other organisations via the NEBRC, our students are starting to see things on a daily basis of the new challenges that are coming through. I mean, simple question. I mean, are we looking at phishing emails? Are we looking at the latest technology that's being breached? The latest versions of malware that come around? I mean, Nicola hit the nail on the head really when you said, make the assumption you're going to get breached. I mean, you could spend thousands and thousands of pounds on software and hardware. I mean, and then you're going to have to maintain all that. You're going to have to update it. You're going to have strategies and policies in place. So it's a very difficult challenge, and it's trying to get the students to understand maybe it's the threat vectors rather than the technology. So when a new technology comes out, does that map to something that's previously been done? I mean, Annabel mentioned earlier on about people are just recycling malware and viruses because it's the easiest option that's out. So there's very little new that gets reinvented unless there's a significant shift in technology. IoT's been out for 4 or 5 years, and there was a big thing about people having smart kettles and smart fridges in the design. I mean, fundamentally, a lot of the devices security was never included from the design up. So people are plugging these into their home networks and potentially creating a backdoor for somebody to exploit. But I mean, there's that many digital devices out there in the world. You can't possibly mitigate against everything. It's almost a siege mentality where you prepare yourself, and then the best form of defense is counterattack almost. And you once they're within an organization, you try and stop the movement within it. But also, if something does happen, as an organization, you can recover as quickly as possible from that and then move on. So you're not shut down for days or weeks losing money. So it's an ever-changing landscape, and you're trying to get our students to keep with the times, but to have a fundamental understanding of the principles and processes all the time.
Excellent. Thanks for. So we've got literally 3 minutes left. So I'm going to ask each of you just very quickly. What do you think COVID-19 is? What's the emerging threat going to be? Let's start with you, Annabel.
I'm not sure that things are going to change massively. I think we'll probably see more of the same, but I think we do have challenges that we've got to overcome. And obviously, Nicola alluded to it just now, I think, in terms of cultures within organizations. We've got to get a lot better within the InfoSec community about getting our users to care about security. Making them aware is one thing, getting them to care about it is another. And the only way that we can do that is to make sure that we're storytelling in a way that they kind of, I think, are able to consume a lot better than talking to them in tech talk. And also, you know, drawing parallels with the things that they're scared about in their own lives online, and drawing those parallels. If we can crack that, then effectively that will sort of help us, you know, make them more aware of what they're doing within, you know, within businesses. I think, you know, again, we've come a long way, I think, in terms of security awareness, but we're not, you know, anywhere close, I think, to getting to the kind of levels that we need to. And we've got to start changing the narrative, I think, around that. You know, and periodically, you know, I think little and often is the thing that's really helping. And, you know, doing it in storytelling where people understand what the consequences are or what the impact is. And the impact has to have an emotional response for that person. Otherwise, you know, they don't tend to change behavior. So I think we've got to really look at that. And I think also moving forward, I think the way the landscape's changing, and or will, you know, we will see a reversal of some of this way of working, but actually they will move forward to a hybrid way of working, which will be more, you know, full-time working from home and things like that. And I think we've got to have a serious look at the changes that we've rushed through in our organizations over the last 3 or 4 months, and what impact, what security holes we opened up inadvertently. And then moving forward, how are we going to secure these environments down a lot better? I think certainly in terms of cloud environments and cloud applications, and, you know, making sure we've got, you know, two-factor authentication, you know, when we're getting any access to data. I think the one area that we might increase in is people looking at data leakage solutions, because the threat will be internal as much as external.
To move on, Annabel.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to have to move on because we've got 1 minute left. Nicola, would you like to say anything quickly?
Oh, it's a very similar theme to Annabelle. I think that the phishing emails and the smishing texts are still going to come out. I think another trend that's come out from sort of COVID that will continue as we go back into normal life is sort of domain jacking as well. Lots of people have been buying sort of website domains that say COVID or Corona and things like that. And as we go back to normal, I think a lot more of those will come out in terms of sort of the business support that the government have offered and things like that that Martin talked about earlier. I think on the flip side, the positive, although we have had to rush in to solutions, I think a lot of our clients have had their business continuity plans like thoroughly tested during this to get everybody down to remote working, and potentially this has highlighted and fast-tracked some of the concerns that the security teams have been screaming about for years, and that have actually had to be introduced very quickly, which is probably a positive.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Last word then, Martin, I'm afraid. What do you think is coming?
More of the same. The only thing that will change really is going to be the stories that are weaved into some of these scams. You know, we've had more of the same. When you look at the last 3 years of the Cybersecurity Breaches Survey, if we were to have a national disaster tomorrow, which is another ash cloud comes from a volcano, that's what the themes will be. So it'll just depend. When there is a world post-COVID, the phishing emails will continue. They'll just use a different theme.
Okay, look, thank you very much. I think I'm going to have to kill it up there, but thank you very much, Martin. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Annabel. And don't forget Cyberfest in September this year. Most will be online. Thank you very much then. Cheers now.
Thank you.
Thanks.